Hello listeners and welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Site Shed. This is episode 121 and you're joining us today for part 7 of the Grow Your Perfect Business podcast series that I'm conducting. And if you are in the space of wanting to free up some time in your business or looking how to streamline some of your processes and the way you're currently doing things, then this is going to be the podcast for you. This episode is called Designing the Right Systems for Your Business. And it stems on from the previous episodes in this series, which I encourage you to go back and check out because the way that we've designed it is they do stem into each other. So with that in mind, enjoy the show and please head across to iTunes and leave us a review if you enjoy. This podcast is proudly brought to you by the Site Shed's Business Accelerator program. Now let me ask you a question. Are you fed up, sick and tired of having to depend on other people or other contractors to generate your own work for you? Do you ever just get completely confused with the whole lead generation scenario for your business? Or what about instances where people do come to your door, but they're not your ideal customer? How would you like to be able to generate qualified leads for your customers on demand? If you head across to the siteshed.com/explode, you'll be able to get access to the free training that we've put together, which takes you through the step-by-step process in which we've been able to help clients generate some crazy results in their business. I'm talking results like 179 highly qualified leads within the space of up to 30 days. All this is very available to you and the training is free. So head across to the siteshed.com/explode and you can check it out for yourself.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello listeners and welcome back to part 7 of the Grow Your Perfect Business podcast series here on the Site Shed. My name is Matt Jones and you're joining us today for an episode that we're creating on designing systems. Now, the purpose of this episode is to give you an overview of some of the potential things that you need or should be considering at the system development stage of your business. And the reason why I'm going through this is because basically you've got to have these things in place. Maybe not all of them, it will vary. And I should also disclose there's a very likely chance that there are certain things that I have not covered off on this that is specific to your business. However, this is a general overview. These are some of the things that I know both myself and my customers certainly encounter. So I thought I'd just share them with you just to, I suppose, put it in your mind and give you a bit of just make it present, make you aware of certain things that you can go ahead and get on top of. I'm going to share this framework within the show notes. So if you do want to go back and get some clarification over things that we've spoken about, you can do that within the show notes to this episode, which is available through the siteshed.com. So about this series, this is episode 7. In the first episode, we were talking a lot about planning and strategy. And I encourage you to go back and listen to these two guys if you haven't already, because I have designed it in a way that they kind of lead into each other. So the first episode, we were talking about planning. In the second episode, we were talking about personality profiling and a bit on customer avatar, customer profiling. Well, that was probably in the third episode there. We spoke more about knowing your customer. In the fourth episode, we were talking about just getting some clarity around your offer and around your product. And in the fifth episode, we were talking about finding the right help. And then we have moved on to defining job roles, which was actually a repurposed episode from way back in episode 63 with the one and only Mr. Al Levy. And yes, as I said today, we're going to be talking about designing your systems. So, where do we start? I've started at the top here with some strategy and accountability things. And this is obviously very important because I suppose primarily at the strategy and accountability level, it's really very much about getting it out of your head and getting it onto paper, turning that intellectual property into intellectual knowledge. And if you go back and listen to the first episode of this series, which was episode 114, where we're talking about planning for success, we run through in detail some strategies around getting all the planning down pat. However, at the end of the day, without going, recapping too much on episode 1, it's really about, having the right tools available to you and whatever works for you. There's no right or wrong with this stuff. It's just a matter of getting it done. So for example, perhaps you're a visual person and you like using whiteboards. I love using whiteboards. I've got one behind me in the office here, and I really find it opens sort of a creative avenue when I get the whiteboard pen out and I've got a clear whiteboard. I can really come up with some cool stuff. Likewise, a lot of people will respond well to doing the same sort of thing on simply a notepad. If you want to draw it, get a pencil and paper and start drawing it out, then go right ahead. Personally, I prefer to initially frame things up on a whiteboard, so get a structure, and then I like to put it onto a program which I'm currently talking off, which is called MindMeister, and it's basically a mind mapping tool. What a mind map enables you to do is have an idea put out in front of you and then expand on it. So, when you draw something on paper, sometimes you can see something that you'd like to develop further, however, you've run out of room. So with a mind mapping tool, it sort of gives you the flexibility to be able to get in there and expand that specific topic a little bit further. And in the instance of this program that I'm using, you can even then set out and create an entire new map based off that, which is what I've done for this series, actually. So the Grow the Perfect podcast series has its own mind map. And then off that, each episode, I've created a separate mind map, which is talking about the specific episodes. So there's many mind mapping tools available. Some of them come free. Some of them come with a charge. It's really up to you. As I said, I'm liking at the moment this MindMeister, which is great. And then there's also Lucid Chart or Draw.io, which comes free with the if you're using Google Apps or G Suite as it's now called. There's a lot of tools that are available to that. So then from a collaborative point of view, so it's also important, I think, when you're talking strategy and especially accountability, to have and employ tools that facilitate collaboration. So what do I mean by that? Well, putting things in front of you, and we're going to go a little bit further into this when we talk about project management. However, I like to use Kanban boards. And what a Kanban board is, it's basically a column or say a web interface which has a series of columns, and that series of columns enables you to put tasks in and allocate those tasks to specific people, and you can move them through stages. So as an example, you might have a column which is ideas, then you might have another column which is in action, then you might have another column which says awaiting feedback, or another column that says completed, and then maybe another one that says on hold. So you can move certain tasks through the board and you can see visually where they're at. And some of the cool tools that are available for that are things like Trello, which again is free. You can use Asana, which again is free. There's Podio and there's Meistertask. Again, there's a whole bunch of different things. I'm currently using Meistertask for its integration with MindMeister. They're the same company. They've just got two different products, and our team's finding that's really handy because you can mind map something and then you can take specific things off that mind map and deploy it straight into a Kanban board, which takes it, puts it visually in front of everybody. So that's kind of cool. And then obviously, of course, having a calendar, so a cloud-based calendar, that's always very handy. A lot of these tools, actually most of these tools will have an inbuilt calendar, which is important. And then most of the bigger ones will also sync with your main calendar programs, be that Google Calendar or maybe it's a Microsoft product or whatever it is. However, it's good to have the calendars there because the calendars enable you to put a time frame on your tasks, which enables you to basically stick to your schedule. So that's kind of all I want to talk about on strategy and accountability. At the end of the day, just get it out of your head and get it in a collaborative platform where your whole team can see what's going on. Or if not the whole team, I suppose the team members that need to see it. If you're talking field technicians, perhaps they don't necessarily have to be part of that. But I would certainly think that it's an important part for the administration staff and basically anyone that's in charge of management, etc. So in a segue to that, let's talk about some administration systems. So what are tools and what sort of systems should be deployed from an administration point of view? Well, that again varies and it's also specific to your company. However, I would say as a base level, there would be things like email. So email is, a tool which internally I think is very important And I would also encourage you when you're talking email, if it's within an organization, have emails that are specific to your company. So, things like, or have an email that's tied into your domain, for example. That's important. You don't want people running around, in my opinion, with a whole bunch of different, at Gmail or at Hotmail or all this kind of stuff. It's better to have them all tied into your own email domain, because from a business owner's point of view, it serves a lot of strength in the space of controlling your IP. For example, if somebody does decide to leave your organization, or if they decide, or if they, they get fired or whatever it may be, if they've been working off email accounts that are tied into your domain, you can basically deny the access for them into that account, so that at the end you've controlled your IP. So that becomes very important when we move into cloud storage and we move into intellectual property. So, if you've got business information that's stored in the cloud, and I strongly suggest that you do, because at the end of the day, the last thing you want is to be having, business information that you need to access stored in either a filing cabinet or on a desktop computer. Because if you're away from the desk, you want to have access to that material, and cloud solutions facilitate that need. So if you are away on business and you need a document, everything should be stored within the cloud. We use Google Drive, and it's very, very powerful. I can give access to my team members to specific files, specific folders, or entire areas, be that marketing, finance, sales, whatever it could be, depending on what their role is in the organization. So cloud storage is a very important part of our business. In fact, I can access my entire business no matter where I am in the world. All I need is internet connection, and I can access anything to do with my business purely off my mobile phone or off my iPad or whatever it is. So then we talk a little bit more about, from an administrative point of view, okay, well, what's going to be running the business? Where are my systems kept? Where are my procedures kept? So having an intraweb or like a wiki or something like that is also very powerful. Again, we have a wiki which we store in a program called Google Sites, and it's a fantastic tool because we can create systems and we can save them in there, and then when new people come on board, or if somebody has a question in our team about how to do a certain thing, I can share a system that I've created on how to do that, and they can go in there and they can see it. So it basically frees me up from having to reteach people the same thing over and over again, because it's all stored in the cloud. When we talk project management from administration point of view, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, however, project management basically gives your team an overview of what is being done, and it also gives them a visual on things that not only they need to be doing themselves, but also on things that need to be done in order for them to do what they need to do. So, when you're talking project management for certain tasks, that certain task may have a series of steps that need to be completed in order for that task to be able to be finished. So those tasks may be allocated to different people, and project management basically enables you to get a visual overview of that process. So project management's more specific to, well, there's a number of things. So from an administration point of view, you could be, deploying project management, or using, I should say, project management for everything marketing related, for example, or, it could be sales processes, or it could be creating systems and things like that. So project management would be handy for that. And if we're talking about from a service point of view, so if you're a technician, or say you're a builder, or you might be a plumber or that kind of thing, project management in that regard would be relevant to things like, okay, well, how's this project going to run, and what are the stages of this project? So that's where you would map that out. So, if you're a builder, you might have, preliminaries, you might have in the ground, you might have the first concrete pour, then you might have all the different stages of that building process built out for you. And if you're a construction plumber, it may be very similar. You might have your in-ground plumbing, you might have your stack work, you might have your rough-in, and then you'd have that through each stage of the job and each level, etc. So project management from a service point of view is typically more suited towards companies that are running larger projects. For the companies out there, for you guys that are listening, that do sort of more of your day-to-day emergency style jobs, what you're probably looking at is more job management. So in scenarios where you're doing, anywhere from 2 to 10 jobs a day, or you've got a whole team of guys doing a whole bunch of maintenance, which could add up to, hundreds of jobs a day, depending on the size of your business, that's where you'd need job management. So job management is basically similar to project management, but on a smaller scale. And what that does is give you an overview of that specific job. It gives your technician an overview of what needs to be done on that job. And it keeps everything on the app. And that's important, because the last thing you want is, people to be communicating via email or via chat or whatever it could be. You want to make sure that, everything that relates to that job is kept together. So if you've got photos, you can attach it to that job file. If you've got, purchase orders, you can attach it to that job file. If you've got sign-offs, you can attach it to that file. So that's why you would use that. Moving along to... Actually, there's one thing I also forgot there back in administration. I didn't have it in my notes, but I should have, is chat services. So, we use Google Hangouts internally within our group to communicate. We also there's a number of platforms that you can use, but what that does is it enables us to sort of eliminate email to a degree. A lot of these project management, job management tools also have chat features, and I think if you're talking about specific projects, then it's really important to keep the communication on that project within that project. However, for small things, if we're talking in our teams, we've got team members located all over the world, and if anyone's online, they can simply send us a chat. It's effectively like a message, I suppose, like a text message, and we can answer that on the spot. Again, it's good for, in my opinion, it's good for communication that's general. If it's to do with a project or a job, we still prefer to keep those notes within that project. So moving along now to finance, and I would certainly encourage you to employ some sort of systems within your finance structure of your business. And there are many out there. I would start probably with a bookkeeping program. So there's a lot of the bookkeeping apps and software that you can use, and they're fantastic. And they just make life so much easier, especially when it comes to things like doing your tax return. So I use one called Xero, but many of you would be familiar with MYOB or QuickBooks. There's a load of them out there. I would speak to your accountant if you're not currently using one, and get yourself up and running with that, because it will make your life so much easier. Everything from invoicing right through to sending out quotes, and then of course the big one is reconciliation. So when you are making expenses for your business, it's so great having a program that enables you to reconcile those expenses or those things that you've purchased against a certain chart of accounts. So, for example, if you're traveling a lot and you're spending money on fuel, you want to be able to reconcile that fuel expense to a travel cost in your bookkeeping software. So these cloud programs will facilitate that, and they'll enable you to do that. And that becomes very important and very useful when it comes to tax time, because your accountant can log in and they can see, oh, okay, you spent this much on fuel, so that's a deduction. You spent this much on, tools, or that's a deduction, and it's all mapped the right way. Again, speak to your accountant about this. Obviously, I'm not an accountant. However, it will certainly make their life a lot easier if you're not already using one. And if you have an accountant that is against it, I would suggest you probably look for another accountant, because in a modern society like we live in today, tools like this are there for everybody's convenience, and some of these old school mentalities don't really have a place, in my opinion, in a modern environment. There's also payment taking facilities, which will integrate a lot of the time with your invoicing and with your bookkeeping programs. I would say if you are running a service-based business like emergency electrical, or maybe you do lawn care or whatever it is, and you're dealing with customers directly on a COD basis, you are crazy if you're not taking payment on site. Absolutely nuts. If you've done the work, get paid and get out. Like this whole mentality around chasing down invoices and doing all this stuff, it's just such a dated approach, which is so time and cost consuming for you as the business owner. Those days are gone. Get out there and get a program that enables you to take payment on site, and you don't have to go chasing all these debts, and you shouldn't have to anyway. The other big thing that is super important with finance systems is reporting. Like, you really want to know every month where you're standing financially, and perhaps what's predicted for the month to come. So checking things like profit and loss is a fantastic starting point for that. And then, of course, if you've got a program or if you've got forecasting built into that, you also know what you can expect for the month to come, which is handy because it enables you to budget and do things like that. Okay, so moving on from finance, let's move a little bit into marketing and branding. So marketing and branding let's talk marketing anyway. There's a number of different tools out there that I think that companies should be using, and I'm going to start with one that I think every company, regardless of your size and regardless of your specific vertical or niche, I think every company should have a CRM in place. And CRM stands for Customer Relationship Management. And what it does is, as its name suggests, it looks after your customer records. So everything from name, phone number, email, address, right through to specific jobs that you've done for them, perhaps spouses' names. You could have business address as well as residential address. It could have any detail that you want basically tied into that customer file. And it's a really, really important tool. And I think everybody should be using one. And there's so many free tools out there. In fact, we've just recently in the last 3 weeks, I've actually started using a different CRM. And trust me, I've used a lot of CRMs in my time. This one is one by a company called HubSpot, HUBSPOT, and it's a free tool, and it is very, very detailed. Now, disclaimer, HubSpot is their main revenue stream is through their email marketing platform, which we'll get to in a little bit, and it is very expensive. It's very good, but it's very expensive. So their sort of lead magnet into that paid platform is their CRM, which is free. However, regardless, we're using it. We're not using the email marketing. We're using another one, and it's working really well. It's giving our whole team visual over what's happening. So, for example, when a new customer or when a potential lead comes into the business, that customer gets entered into the CRM, and then notes and tags apply to that customer. So, for example, we can see, okay, what was the conversation, the phone conversation that was had, or the email conversation that was had with that customer, and it all gets saved in the CRM. So, if it's myself or if it's somebody else in the organization, when they send out an email, that information or that email trail gets pulled straight into the CRM. So anybody that comes in there and clicks on that customer can see what communication has happened with that individual or that company, which means that everybody has an overview. So it kind of avoids the scenario where you're talking to the same customer about the same thing. It just basically puts everything there in front of you and in front of the team. So it's very powerful. So I would thoroughly encourage everyone out there, if you're not using one, get out there and get one. There's a load of them available. Just go search CRM, small business CRM or whatever, and you'll find a whole plethora of them. There's literally hundreds, and they are kind of different. They do suit certain types of businesses. Some of them are expensive. You don't necessarily have to get sucked into the expensive ones. I would, as I said, the one that we're using, and I've been through a lot, the one we're using at the moment is a free one, and it's doing a fantastic job so far. Everything from organizing, leads and monitoring our sales process right through to, an entire section that I've built, a lead funnel that I've built on guests for the podcast. So there's different ways you can attack it. Email systems. So email marketing is a big thing in business. And again, I think that businesses should have email marketing to some degree. Now, when we talk email systems as well are effectively a form of CRM. They do keep customer details. Some of them do a better job than others. We use one called Active Campaign, which is fantastic because what it enables us to do is create tags relevant to each individual customer. So, for example, somebody might download they head across to the site shed and they download say it's an ebook from one of the past guests or something like that. When they download that, they actually get tagged in our email marketing platform so I can see what they're interested in. So that's a very useful tool when you start running specific targeted campaigns. So Active Campaigns one, there's MailChimp, which is free. You can get out there and use that. And then there's there's dozens and dozens of these things out there. You really just got to find one that suits you. And there's a lot of the more complex ones, which charge quite a large subscription fee. Ontraport, HubSpot, Salesforce. There's Infusionsoft. There's a whole bunch of different ones out there. And I also think while we're talking about email marketing, it is a good thing for you guys to get in the habit of maybe sending out a newsletter every month or perhaps every quarter or whatever it is, just so you can engage with your customers to a degree. It's not really the point of this talk, but while we're talking email marketing systems, I think it's good for businesses to start leveraging that to a degree. So moving along to syndication tools. Now, syndication basically is sharing, like sharing content or, I suppose syndicating out business-related information to a certain marketplace. Now, chances are, if you're listening to this podcast for the first time, then you have seen either a comment or an ad or a post or something across one of the social media platforms that tie into the site shed, and that content was syndicated through a tool that we use called CoSchedule. So every time that I release a podcast or release a blog, what it enables me to do is schedule a series of comments or posts that relate to that podcast, relate to that blog page, and it enables me to send it out across all of my platforms over a given time. So for example, with each blog post that I send out, there will be 47 comments that follow that blog post over the course of a year. And it will automatically get sent out. I enter it once, and then it does all the hard lifting for me. So that's a cool example of how you can share content that's been freshly created on your website. Or there's also things that enable you to create like social media sharing facilities. So, there's programs like Buffer or Hootsuite or MeetEdgar, and they enable you to share content across social media that's not specific to one of your blogs or one of your, a piece of content on your website. It can be, mind you. However, it's not specifically designed for that. So for example, I might read an interesting article that relates to my audience. I might share that out through Buffer, and Buffer will then syndicate that content across my social media streams at a time that I've pre-programmed. So maybe it's tomorrow at midday, or maybe it's tomorrow and a week later to my LinkedIn and to my Facebook. Anyway, there's a load of tools out there. You can go and do your own research on those. So then we're moving along into work health and safety, or, occupational health and safety. And there's certainly systems that need to be implemented in that regard in your business. And depending on what your business is, you will certainly have to do your research as to what is required. So, do you need to have safe work method statements or SWIMs? Are you required to have tool registers? Are you required to conduct regular toolbox talks? Do you have to do incident reports, or do you have to have documented safety walks and all this kind of thing? All this kind of stuff. So all of this information, again, this is really important in my opinion, that you do have this stuff stored in some sort of cloud facility, because these are the things that you will need to be able to access on demand. And, having them saved in an office folder or, on the shelf in your office is not really a good way to be able to get that information on demand when you need it. So I would encourage you to, adopt programs that enable you to facilitate the fact that you need to share, or you need to collaborate on a certain work safety document at the time that you need it. Or maybe you need to share it to, for example, a builder. So say somebody might ask you for, have you got a safe work method statement on XYZ? Yeah, of course I do. It's right here. You pull your phone out, bang, share, and then they have it. Whereas if that was in the office, it would be a bit of a pain, because you'd have to get somebody to send it across to you in an email, and then you'd have to forward the email on to the builder, and it just makes it a bit of a pain. So then moving into, I suppose, the legal side of things, and there's a lot of systems and processes that you will need from a legal point of view. For example, you need to be able to register your business names, and you need to have some processes around those kind of things. Trading names, what is your business company trading as? Do you need to have trademarks registered, or maybe you need to have, copyrights in place? Maybe you need client contracts, or maybe you need staff contracts, or maybe you need both. Maybe you need like a service agreement, for example. And then, of course, as well on the basic level, things like terms and conditions. When customers enter into an agreement with you, what are your terms and conditions? Have they agreed to it? Blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. So you can certainly speak to your lawyer about that kind of thing. There's also a lot of free information around that stuff as well. I'd say at a base level, certainly you should have some sort of terms and conditions and a privacy policy on your website. That's pretty much the base level. And then, a service agreement if you are offering services or goods, just to protect not only you, but also protect the client, So, if you do have products and they need to be returned, then what's your return policy? Or, if you do have, if there's an issue with one of the jobs that you did, then what's your policy to help your customer, give them security and make sure that, they're not left out in the dark. So then we talk about getting the right insurances in place. And I mean, look, this is certainly a discussion that you should be having with your insurance representative. However, things like income protection. Income protection obviously protects you if you get hurt at work. Then there's public indemnity, so that protects the public. You might have your equipment insured. You may have vehicle insurance, like cars or your fleet of vehicles. You may have contents insurance, like if you run an office and you want to make sure that things are protected against theft or fire or anything like that. So that would be another thing that you should be considering is, the systems and I suppose designing your systems around, insurance. So anyway, that was a pretty quick overview into some of the different systems that I think you should be considering within your business. Obviously, as I stated earlier, there's likely to be a lot more. Not all of them will be relevant to you. Some of them may not be, but a lot of them will be. And there's obviously going to be a lot more as well that would also be applicable to you and your specific business. So I hope that helped. As I said before, I'm going to post a screenshot of what I've just done here so you guys can see if you want any more information or you wanted to go back and refer to certain things. You'll be able to do that on the screenshot in the show notes. And other than that, I look forward to speaking to you in the upcoming episodes. If you did enjoy this episode, please do me a favor. Just head across to iTunes or Stitcher or SoundCloud or even YouTube now and just leave us some comments or leave us a review. That would be much appreciated. And if you do leave us a review, we will be reading it out in upcoming episodes at the beginning. And also, if you do leave a review, we will also be giving you the opportunity there to become part of our Naked Marketing segment, which Will and I are running. And what that basically does is it enables you guys to, we will have a look at what's going on in the business from a marketing perspective, and we will run through some options on how you may be able to improve those results. It's only available to people that have left us a review. So get out there and leave us a review. Anyway, that's all from me. And I look forward to speaking to you again in an upcoming episode. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.